Well, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kari Schleler here at Crow Canyon Archaeological Center. We're excited to welcome you to this Four Corners Lecture Series presentation by Jason Nez. I want to give you, I want to give a big shout out to all the folks here at Crow Canyon that are doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that these webinars can happen, especially Dylan Schwint and Taylor Hasbrook. They've been working tirelessly to bring these to you every Thursday, and sometimes even on additional days during the week. And also, we want to note that this is part of the Four Corners Lecture Series, and Crow Canyon is trying to help out a number of our local partners. This talk was originally scheduled and is co-sponsored by the Canyons of the Ancients National Monument, and Amala will be moderating for us here in a second. I'll introduce her in just 1 minute. So I wanted to go over a few little logistics about these Zoom video conferencing technology. So one thing that I wanted to let you know is you'll see that you've got my head and Amala and Jason over on the side of your screen. Well, if that's in a place that you don't like, you can move those talking heads, especially if it's covering up something on the slide that you'd like to see, so you can move that around. Also, we'd really like to make this interactive, and Amala will be monitoring all of the questions that come in and helping, to present those to Jason so that we can make sure that it's interactive during the course of his presentation. So please see that if you look on the bottom of your screen, there should be a little button that says Q&A, and please click on that and type in your questions, and then we'll ask those questions of Jason throughout the presentation, and we'll try to get to them all. Although if all 400 people show up and ask questions, we might be here a really long time, but we'll make that happen. If you're having difficulties with the Zoom platform or connectivity, you can go to our Facebook page, Crow Canyon Archaeological Center's Facebook page, and this is streaming there live. And you can also subscribe to us on YouTube, where this presentation will be posted. Normally it takes about 24 hours after the webinar before it gets posted there, but you can watch all of our past webinars. So you can check those out on YouTube. That's also a great way to share this presentation with anybody who you think might be interested in seeing it that maybe missed it on this live stream. So let me give you a teeny bit of background on Crow Canyon Archaeological Center. Our mission here at Crow Canyon is to empower present and future generations by making the human past accessible and relevant through archaeological research, experiential education, and American Indian knowledge. If you'd like to learn more about Crow Canyon Archaeological Center, you can go to our webpage at crowcanyon.org. And it's really a wonderful opportunity that we're being able to still connect with you, even when many of us are socially isolated at home, by doing these webinars. So we're so excited for this opportunity to be able to reach out to all of the folks that are interested in this part of the world. We have 2 more webinars. We've basically been trying to do webinars every Thursday. Our next 2 webinars, next Thursday, June 11th, is by Steve Lexon, that will focus on Mimbres pottery. And then on Thursday, June 18th, we'll be hearing from Katrina Blair, Essential Food and Medicine of the Land, Wild Wisdom. And you can sign up for these webinars by going to our Facebook page or clicking on the link in the email that you are probably now getting about these webinars. So with that said, what I'd like to do now is turn this over to Amala Posey-Monk, who is the Visitor Services Supervisor at the Canyons of the Ancients National Monument. And she will introduce our speaker today, and I'll pass it over to you, Amala.
Thank you, Kari. Well, I am so excited to be here today, and I too want to extend a lot of gratitude to Crow Canyon Archaeological Center. As our partner, we could not have done this without you. And, all of us with the Four Corners Lecture Series were perplexed on how we could move forward, or sad that we couldn't. And you guys found the means to it. So I just want to thank you so much for allowing us to still do this. And, as we mentioned before we got started, if we had done this in our theater, Jason may have met, 30 or 40 community members, and it would have been amazing. But this platform allows us to connect to hundreds, if not thousands of people. And I'm really appreciative of that, because Jason Nez is near and dear to my heart as well, a longtime friend. I won't tell you any of his dirty secrets, but Jason and I went to undergrad together at NAU in Flagstaff back in the day. And we kind of both started at Grand Canyon National Park together in our 20s. And he has been such a lifelong mentor to me whenever I needed, someone of his caliber to talk to youth, to help make sense of some of the human history that we were seeing on the landscape at Grand Canyon. He was always there to meet with our youth and to talk to them. And as you're about to see, he is just a fabulous human being and so very knowledgeable. So I want to be able to read you Jason's bio. Jason Nez is a Dine archaeologist from Coalmine Mesa, Arizona. He is currently an archaeologist at Grand Canyon National Park, where he works with both the Science and Resource Management and Fire and Aviation Division to assist in the preservation and protection of cultural and natural resources. In the past 20 years, he has also been a National Park Service Interpretive Ranger. He's worked for various federal agencies and cultural resource management companies, including the former Navajo National Archaeology Department. And in his off time, he is working at the family ranch with his horse, Whiskey, and donkey, Roxy. And very exciting. And on a quick note, too, I just want to highlight real quick that Canyons of the Ancients National Monument's birthday is on Tuesday. So this is kind of a fun kickoff, to our birthday celebration. And when you think about the stories that we tell in these public places, it's such a special place. Canyons of the Ancients has the largest recorded sites in the nation, with over 100 sites per square mile. So such a very important resource. And we're so lucky to have someone like Jason to help connect us to people, places. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason. I will let you guys know that I will be moderating all the questions coming in, and I'll be doing my best to try to pause and ask him as we move forward, and so he can answer them as we go.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you started at Grand Canyon, and I started out at Navajo National Monument. So we started the Park Service about the same time. Little different places. So, good afternoon, everyone. As Amala mentioned, my name is Jason Nez. I'm an archaeologist and a firefighter, and I currently work for Grand Canyon National Park, and that's where I'm coming from today. But I am here before you as a regular native archaeologist. So, part of what I'm going to talk about is some of the connections that we Native people have to landscapes, that we Native people have to resources, and a lot of that relationship isn't well understood by a lot of non-Native people. So it starts a lot of questions. It starts a lot of issues when people are saying, why do the natives even care about that? Why do the natives put themselves on the line? Why do the natives take all these risks to protect landscapes? And to a lot of other people and a lot of cultures, landscapes are just inanimate objects. But for a lot of natives, these landscapes are alive, they're powerful, and they're an important part of our identity. And that's what I try to convey to people, and that's what I try to educate people about. So, okay, trying to change the slide. Okay, give me a second. Okay. So I have this slide up because I also try to practice a lot of humor and a lot of humility. Native people, we're not just one group of people, but we're a very diverse gathering of people with different cultures, with different languages, with different looks, and we're very different, but we're very the same in a lot of ways. And for myself, so for a lot of us Navajos, this is the way we introduce ourselves. We say who we are, we say who our fathers are, and who our grandfathers are, and that's how we relate to each other, and that's how we relate to the world around us. So my mother's clan, my mother's mother's clan, my mother's mother's clan, my great great grandmother's, all the way back to the beginning. The my identity was Zuni Edgewater, and that's a clan that's passed through our mothers. And I'm born for the Salt clan, specifically the Arribi Salt clan. And my mother's father is Tangle people, and my father's father is Mexican people. So that's how I relate to people around me. I call people Shema, my mom, or Shaje, or Shache, or Shamela, and that's how I refer to the people around me. And that's important when we live in a harsh landscape where we have to cooperate, we have to get along, we have to establish these relationships so that we can communicate properly. And that's one of the ways that we've done that over the past millennia. And one of the difficult issues that we deal with, particularly a lot of us natives that work for federal, state, and county governments, is that we have a lot of harsh realities that we deal with. We have a lot of history that we have to face. We have to face it every day when we come to work. We have to face it every day when we drive into a park or a forest, when we put on these uniforms. So we have to face that, and we got to make the best of where we're at. We got to represent our people and who we are and what we represent accordingly. So we have to deal with events that happened in the past that we had nothing to do with. A lot of us weren't born when these things happened. A lot of us weren't even, there's just so far back, it's very difficult for us to comprehend sometimes. And a lot of us, we weren't even alive when a lot of these events happened. But what we can do now in the present is learn from the past and work together to prevent these events from ever happening again. There's been a lot of bad history. There's a lot of atrocities. There's a lot of forced migrations and relocations that we have to face and we have to deal with. And we got to work together to stop that from ever happening again. So we live in a time where we deal with justice. We deal with environmental justice. We deal with legal justice. We deal with equality for people, and we deal with equality in what we represent and why we represent it. And we have moral values that we're taught when we're small, that we grow up with, and that's what we try to convey, and that's how we can do our job. We have a lot of ethics. We have a lot of beliefs that help us do what we do. And all of these values, they're expected and they're needed, especially in this day and age. We need people with morality, people that practice ethics, people that believe that we're equal, people that believe that we can all work together. So we get to Native American identity. Native people, we have a very unique place in the world. We have a very unique relationship with the world around us. And we maintain that relationship, we maintain that identity by knowing who we are, by knowing our clans, by knowing where we're born, by knowing the lands that we live on, the lands that we use, and knowing our history. That's part of who we are. And if we start losing those pieces, we start losing little bits of ourselves. We start losing that part of our identity. And for Navajos, I mentioned my clan earlier. We have our clan system that helps identify us and it helps relate us to the past. One of the realizations I've had over these many years is I can't separate science, I can't separate law, I can't separate policy, I can't separate economics, I can't separate government. All of it comes together when a Native person does science. All of it comes together when we're out working to protect landscapes. So one of the things that we have to do is connect to the past. We got to connect to landscapes, and we do that through our clan system, the Nedona. For example, we look over to, if we can see can we see the pointer?
We can see your cursor. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I am up here. So that's my clan, and My Kapahak clan were related to different groups, were related to different tribes. And that clan, we actually have an origin place in the mountains east of Albuquerque, east of Santa Fe, actually, called Kapahak. And it's actually a pueblo that we come from. At one point in our history, we were descended from Zuni people that migrated north and then west, and then they became Navajo. And we look at our Salt clan, our modern Salt clan. We have a variety of origins, and one of the origin places for the Salt clan is Las Salinas Pueblos, southeast of Albuquerque, the pueblos that were abandoned in the 1850s. And we look at my mother's father's clan, the Tangle people. And when I used to do interviews and ethnographies for the tribe, some of those elders had told me that that particular clan, the Tangle people, was a Ute clan from Great Sand Dunes National Monument. And even my father's father's clan, my grandfather, the Mexican clan, they're descended from Mexican people. So we look at who we are, we look at how we define ourselves, and we can make those connections. We're not just connecting to people, we're connecting to landscapes. We're connecting to places like Tecopantepec in New Mexico. We're connecting to places like Las Salinas Pueblos, Ashihende, in places where they make salt, places where salt comes out of the ground. Those are places where my different clans come from. And knowing that, and knowing the people that used to live there were Zunis at Tecopantepec, there were Zunis at Las Salinas, or Pueblo people at Las Salinas. That starts establishing my relationship to the past, that I can look at the prehistoric sites, the pueblos, the rock art that are out there, and I know that there's a connection. Even though I'm Navajo culturally, I speak Navajo, I look Navajo, I practice Navajo culture. My background is varied. My background comes from a lot of places and a lot of people, and that diversity is part of what makes me strong. That diversity is part of what makes all of us strong, is having that background that allows us to connect across time and space. So any questions about that before I get past that? Let me try to find a question. Okay, no question. Okay, no question. So it brings us to sort of our modern times, where we live on a landscape that's been occupied for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, for a millennia, for time immemorial. And we live in a landscape that's been lived on by other people. People come and go, and that's the human story. So we go out. I used to do home site surveys. I used to do power line surveys, and I would work with people on what we see here, pottery sherds and landscapes. And people, oftentimes, we never heard the story of those connections to those artifacts and those people and those places, and we fear them. But once we learn about the prehistoric people, once we learn about who we are through our clan system, once we learn about those connections, we no longer fear them, we respect them. And I think over the past 100 years with the Americans, the Mexicans, and the Spaniards, a lot of our respect has been misinterpreted as fear. A lot of non-native people saw the immense respect we had for these prehistoric sites, and that respect we had was by avoiding them, by only visiting them when we had to for ceremonies or for offerings, and they interpreted that as fear. They interpreted that as just like we're scared of everything, and I think that we started to believe that. I think that it's gotten fear runs away with you if you let it. So we lived in this place that's been occupied for thousands of years, and these people, for a lot of us, they were our ancestors. We have this word that we don't use as much, nasaze, and we don't realize that that word over time has become derogatory. That word has gotten away from us. And one of the actual meanings, one of the actual interpretations, we look at this word nasaze, and na is a foreigner or a stranger or someone from somewhere else. It can also mean an enemy, but it has a lot of meaning. You move into a new neighborhood and a new place, and you don't know the people, you don't speak the language, you're sort of getting used to everyone. And one of the terms you can use is na, And I think that misinterpretation by non-native people has run away with us. And we take the word apart and it becomes na. And then zaze, and zaze is an old Navajo word meaning great, 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 great grandparents 4 times. So if you pronounce it na zaze, na zaze, it means your great, 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 great grandparent. So immediately we're establishing connections. We're pulling back that fear that we have from misunderstanding. I mean, humans, we're just afraid of the things that we don't understand. We have sicknesses out there. We have diseases out there. We have darkness. And if we don't understand these things and if we don't know how they occur and how to deal with them, the proper ceremonies, the proper prayers, if we're not initiated, for lack of a better word, to deal with these things, it, we become afraid of it. It can hurt us if we let it. And if we do understand these things, then we have nothing to fear. And then we're stronger. It's like faith. And instead of fear, we have respect. We respect things and places and people that we hold in esteem. Respect isn't blind fear. We respect what we know and understand. So as we're out on the landscape coming across rock art and artifacts scattered, that's something we practice is respect. We respect it by leaving these things alone because that artifact on the ground has more value and more power on the ground than us taking it home, us damaging it, us removing it from its context. And it brings us to this. It brings us to this Navajo concept we call Hajon. And it's living in balance. Hajon is balance. It's trying to find our place in the world and get along with everyone. And it's not about making a few bucks for ourselves. Money doesn't last forever. And the things we do, it can scar the earth, it can scar the sky, it scars ourselves, and it destroys the future. And that's what we're working for. Hajon is balanced with everything, everything around us. And we can think of it as a direction, as directional. Hajon, we have to be in balance with what's behind us, the past. We have to be in balance with where we're coming from, the things we did, the things our ancestors did. We got to find a balance with that. We have to atone for it so we can move forward into the future. Forward is what's in front of us. What we do now affects 7 generations. It affects 700 generations into the future. How we act now, how we save things now, how we preserve and protect things now is for all these young great great grandkids that we're never going to see and we're never going to know. But we have to realize like that's the generation we're working for. What we do now affects them. And balance is also with our sides, with the right and left. We have different things going on our sides. We have neighbors. And for my tribe, we have the federal government, the county government, the state government. We have other tribes. We have Utes, Zunis, we got Hopis, we got Paiutes. And those are people that we're living with. We live with a long time, and we need to keep those balances. We need to keep those communication going. We need to be able to work together because we're going to be here forever. So we have to keep that balance. And we have to keep balance with what's above us, with air, the environment. We have to breathe air. Up here in the air is thought. Up here is thinking. Up here is dreaming. Up here is religion. We have to take care of what's above us. And we have to take care of what's beneath us, which is the earth, water. We have groundwater below us. We have threats all around us. If we frack down and destroy the water table, we'll have nothing to drink. And then we're out of balance with what's below us and what's ahead of us, the future. Because if we have nothing to drink, the future has nothing to drink. So as we're living, as someone like me is doing science and doing my job, those are the balances I'm trying to find, and those are the balances I'm trying to maintain. We have to realize that we're not just individuals walking around. My survival is dependent on everyone that's out there. Your survival is dependent on what I do in my job doing cultural preservation. So we're all trying to find ways to come together, ways to communicate, and ways to work together. So it brings us to this. Why are,
I was just going to say that we have a few questions. Do you want to take a quick little break to answer some of those questions before too much time?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the
First one
question.
from Maryland asked, they're under the Q&A. There's 5 in there right now. The first one says, is there a time frame relationship to a person's family history? For example, when did your ancestors live in Las Salinas?
So for a lot of natives and my tribe, time is just, it's tangible and intangible. Time can be yesterday or 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. And that's how we look at time. It can be like it happened yesterday or it happened a long time ago. Time is just insignificant in that way. It's a weird way. It's a weird way to answer it, but time is just, it's long and it's short, I guess. And this next question, as an English person listening to linguists say about Athabascan culture. Okay, so one of the questions is about the origins of the Neff people and what the Neff say about the origins of Four Corners and relations to Pueblo people. So I was mentioning the diversity of my tribe and the relationship of people around us. And when you look at the identity of our clans and identity of our people, we come from a lot of tribes around us. So that being said, a lot of regions of my reservation, we have sometimes our origin stories are a little different than each other. Sometimes there's a different variation in where they say they came from and where they say we came from. So, for example, out in Western Navajo, we talk about the emergence place. And the way I was taught by my grandmother, a salt woman, was we came from Kajine, which is over in the Grand Canyon. Whereas the rest of the tribe out in the eastern half, they say, oh, we came from Archaeological is up in Alamosa, up in the mountains there. So we have a diversity of history too. We have a diversity of different places we're coming from. So with that in mind, we look at this question, and when we say we emerge here in the Four Corners, we're referring to our diverse background, our diverse tribal histories, and we're also looking at the science way. We're looking at what we can prove with science, which is still a lot of it's theoretical, a lot of it's yet to be proven, but it's like we're balancing that. Yes, there might have been a late Athabascan migration about 4,000, 6,000 years ago, and those Athabascans came down and settled in the Southwest. But then there's also people like my clans, the Nash Edakaba, who were already living here, who met those Athabascan people, and they became us, and we became them. So in that sense, our origin is here in the Four Corners. And in some of our stories, when we arrived here on the Earth at the beginning of the Third World, there was Pueblo people here, and we helped each other, and we lived each other. We lived with each other. They taught us corn agriculture. We taught them hunting technologies. So there was a give and take relationship there. So Navajo's relationship to the native civilizations of northern Mexico. Many in Mexico point to connections between the Chichimeca people and civilizations. So referring to our diverse background, there's people coming and going. There's leaping Apaches down on the Texas-Mexico border, and that's not something I've really been looking at. We look at the lithic technology, we look at the ceramic technology, we look at um, cultural relationships, resemblances, and all that, and I don't quite see that coming out of northern Mexico. It's not to say it's not there, but it's something that needs to be looked at. And some Navajos, they are descended from those some people. Some of my, in more recent times, Navajo women have married Mexican men from northern Mexico. Mexican women have come up here, and we call them Nakaidene. They're still Navajo, but they still have their cultural identity from where they come from. So that's just how we roll. So how do we recommend conveying the complexity of the word Nasaza to visitors? So I use the word ancestral Puebloan. I use the word prehistoric people, and that's how I talk about these prehistoric people. But if I'm talking to Navajo people, then I'd say it like Din Nasaza, Din Nasaza, scant or something like that. Like this is what they come from, and that's just the word we use. But in that context, I don't think it can be taken as derogatory. But it's just something that local units need to work on. So Kiani, Turkey people, Folded Peoples Clan. So there's just clan relationships. Every clan has like a different grouping, and within that grouping, that clan is related. So the Kiani clan met the Turkey people when they came back from. They met the Turkey people were originally from around San Francisco Peaks area, and the Betkatni. So the Kiani, the Karidine, and the Betkatni were sort of related in that way. They lived together for at one point in the far past. So I'm gonna go ahead now. We have a bunch of questions. We'll try to get back to them now. Yeah.
Sounds good, Jason.
Okay. So now we're looking at why are cultural resources important? Why do we have people that are archaeologists out there studying the past, studying artifacts, and studying these connections? As a Native person, I'm not just looking at the past. I'm not just looking at artifacts on the ground. I'm looking at connections. I'm looking at the things that prehistoric people felt was important because those things are important to us now in the present. I'm looking at these connections that define us and protect us. So we live in a time of diminishing lands and diminishing resources, and these are our resources. And some of that history that we have to face is this is what the 48 states used to look like prior to Columbus. And this is what it looks like now. And some of these places are actually getting stronger. We have I think it was the Wampanoag tribe that is having an issue with the Department of Interior. And these issues go on, and in some areas, native land gets taken away. So we have to maintain those connections in order to hang on to our land base. And it brings us to this inconvenient fact of history here, and particularly here at places like Grand Canyon and most national park units. We have 1,500, 500 years of human occupation here at the Grand Canyon, and only 97% of that, or only 3% of that is Euro-American. 97% of the history here at the Grand Canyon is Native American, yet we hear very little about that time. So think about it. We look at this, we look at my little pie chart here, trying to get the marker. Most of time is native history, hunters moving across the landscape, people developing agriculture, people developing civilization, people practicing government and science. All of that has been happening for this past 15,000 years. And yet most of what we hear about is right here when Pedro de Tovar comes to Grand Canyon. We hear about Teddy Roosevelt coming to the Grand Canyon. We hear about people like John Hant, non-native people who came in the vacuum when natives were driven off this landscape. We tend to hear about that rather than the 97% of Native American history here. And that's a fact that we have to deal with. That's something that we need to get past and we need to come to terms with. So cultural resources are important. Knowing where people were, how long we were here, and what we were doing here is important in connecting us to the past. If we can't remember where we're from, if we can't remember where we lived, if you can't remember your grandparents, if you can't remember the names and the stories of hills, mountains, canyons, and rivers, we can lose our resources. We can lose our identity. And we have to keep in mind, too, that we have different beliefs, we have different customs and languages, but we all believe in the importance of cultural resources. These places, these artifacts that are out there, and all of these resources, they're us, they're who we are, they're Native American. And double slide there. So when we think of it that way, Native people were made of this landscape. Pottery sherds, projectile points, the pueblos, I try not to use ruins, and people still visit them, people still use them. The rock art panels that are out there, the mountains, the rivers, the animals, and the plants, all of these things are who we are as Native people. They're all of the things that make us up. They're the things that talk to us. They're the things that learn us. These are the things that teach us about who we are. We look at the ceramics that are out there, and people just think, oh, what a pretty design. Oh, what a cool design. But when I'm looking at these things, like I'm a farmer, I'm a hunter, I'm a potter, I'm a ceramicist, I make pottery, and I look at this thing and I see water flowing and swirling and moving down, and I see the furrows that you do when you do that you make when you build irrigation or when you agriculture, when you plant plants. We look at this big vessel from Navajo National Monument and we see textile designs. And that time period is when cotton becomes big in northern Arizona. So these vessels are labeled. They probably had cotton textiles in here. And these are the types of blankets that you would hang on the wall in a cold winter and help insulate your house. These are the things you hang against your wall to have ceremonies against. And these things are active. You're supposed to interact with them. They're not supposed to be in a museum where you can't touch them, where you can't interact with them, because this is supposed to be full of water. And little birds would land here and drink water out of it. This is important because that means that this is alive. This is meant to have water and this is meant to have little birds landing on it. And down on the Little Colorado, we see the river flowing, and then we see the little furrows with little mounds that they're probably planting corn on or planting plants on. And as a farmer, that's what I see in it. We see these little swirls of water coming out from underground, and there's still places out here that are just covered with pottery sherds. Every one of these is giving us information about who we are and what we're doing. And we're looking at pottery, and we live in a dry place. We live in a desert that's hot. We're thirsty all the time, and it changes the way we think because all of a sudden you have these rivers meandering across the landscape, and it's reflected in our pottery. We have rivers meandering across the landscape. We have ripples, and we have ripples here in our pottery designs. And I remember growing up in Tuba City, and my grandfather would open the head gates down in Curly Valley, and I used to sit there and watch things float by and just watch all these ripples go by. And I'm sure this potter that made this vessel saw the same thing, ripples going by on their prehistoric head gates that they open up for their ditches. And that's out there. That's what these things are telling us that are out on the landscape. We have lithic artifacts, projectile points that we think of as cool. People think of it as a novelty, but Native people, we still use these things. And it's hard to comprehend sometimes that these things that are out in museums, these things that are locked up behind glass that are suffocating, their energies are being diminished when they're not in contact with humans. They're meant to be prayed with by Native people. They're meant to be handled and appreciated. And then if you don't need it, we just put it back down. But for some of us, when we're out on the landscape, when I'm out with my horse, I pray with it. I rub it on my horse so he's strong, so he's fast, and so he's safe. And that's what we do. And we have these sites out on the landscape that are falling apart, even within my lifetime. When I was younger, this was still probably about that high, that big. This wall went that way. And now it's fallen over. And if we don't learn about these things, if we don't learn about the people that they're associated with, we lose parts of our history. We lose parts of our identity. The Kia'ani clan in Navajo comes from Kinya'a in New Mexico. So this is out near Crown Point, New Mexico. And this particular pueblo here is where this Navajo clan is associated with, and it got its name and its identity from. So that's important to them. And I'm sure to a lot of them, once they realize those connections, they're going to want to save and protect this place, which is what the Park Service is trying to do. So those connections are out there. There's signs of who we were. We look at rock art panels, and it still teaches us ceremonies. It still corrects us on parts of ceremonies that we're doing wrong. And this particular ceremony, the Nightway, which the ceremonial cycle just ended with the end of winter, but this is a ceremony that we learn from Pueblo people. In the old Navajo story, the Navajos came into the Quetzal area at Navajo National Monument in those particular canyons, and they encountered the Pueblos, specifically Zunis that were said to be living at Quetzal. And they taught us this ceremony, and we use that to heal them. and we still practice it today. And that's what this rock art refers to. And there's things that we can learn, and science sometimes is just catching up to what natives practice and what we know. And in this particular panel down on the San Juan River near Shiprock, we see flute players, we see dancers, and then we see fields. So again, as a farmer, this is what I see. I see these grid gardens, and the prehistoric people, they're telling us this is how you farm in this area. And the flute players are saying make music for the crops, they'll grow better. And they're even showing us what types of plants and what time like what part of the life cycle that these particular corn or beans are growing in. So they're giving us details that help us. If the zombie apocalypse were to happen tomorrow, we could just go to these rock art panels and they'll teach us how to survive. They'll teach us what to hunt, when to hunt it. They'll teach us what to plant and when to plant it. That information is out there. And this particular panel out in the forest, we can see elk and other animals standing on the rim of a canyon. So here's a rim of a canyon. And this is like looking at it from space in Google Earth. And down here, just out of sight, is a water hole. So what these prehistoric people are doing is going over to the water hole and they chase the animals. You can see this this critter here. They're chasing the animals up this canyon so they can't get out of the canyon. And when they get to the end, they run into nets. They run into rope snares. And there's people here. And some of these people, the detail's not good enough in this picture, but they're throwing outlot darts. They're shooting spear. They're using spear throwers down into that herd of animals that are trying to get out through this narrow exit. So they're showing us how to hunt, and they're showing us where to hunt. And there's even details in clothing out there that if we can zoom in, we can see like these leg warmers they're wearing. We can see some of their jewelry. We can see the designs on their clothes, and these are things that we can learn by looking at these things, by studying these things. These rock figures are 6 feet tall. They're very rare polychrome style for Basilica period. And you can see here all these bighorn sheep. They're running this way to the right, and there's hunters down here, and all these bighorn sheep, they have darts in it. So these hunters, they have outlots in their hand, and they're throwing darts into the sheep. So they're hunting. They're showing us at this spot you can do game drives and you can be a successful hunter. And then in the later period, people with bows and arrows came in who drew sheep in a different style, and they're using that same area, probably looking at this rock art saying, this is where we need to hunt. And this is where they were hunting. And being familiar with this area, the different later projectile types, the Paiute type and the Navajo type, later people came, look at this rock art and practice this hunting here too. And it can help direct us too. At this particular panel near Monument Valley, this giant dart is about 14 feet long, and this projectile point is typable. It's an Elko corner notch, and it actually points to a spring that's dry. It's probably been dry for a couple hundred years, but it's showing those prehistoric people, this is where you hunt. Go in this direction and there's a water source. And at one point, there's probably Pleistocene megafauna like mastodons and bison antiquus there that are gone now. But those are things that a hunter sees. Those are things that a thirsty person sees. We look out in a little Colorado, just out there, and this particular panel was vandalized by a church in the early 90s, but when it was intact before it was vandalized, you could see this swirl or this image. And what I see when I'm standing here is that used to be out here. That was a river meandering across the floodplain, and these are takeouts where water would flow and go to different gardens here. And then there's human figures out here. There's probably ownership for different areas, and there's different events going on. There's animals running by. There's a lot of hunting in this area. So those are the ways that we look at landscape. We try to have to look through it from the eyes of hunters and the eyes of farmers. And this one's a great one because you walk up to this rock, this boulder here, and it's saying, take a step. And right below this boulder, there's a spring. And then you stop, And then you hide behind this boulder and you can use the bow and arrow and get whatever animals come to the spring here. So he's like, stop, hunt here. So they're telling us this is where you can hunt. Meanwhile, above, there's weather patterns, there's constellations going on, there's different things going on in the sky. So that's how we connect to prehistory, is we're looking at these things, we're practicing these things, we're learning from it. It's literally speaking to us. And if we become artists and scientists and we learn our traditional histories, we can still learn from these things. And then we also look at these landscapes that we hold dear that are sacred to us. This is Tzotzit out in New Mexico near Albuquerque, and it's one of our sacred mountains to a lot of tribes, and it's under threat of uranium mining. It's under threat of inappropriate grazing and logging practices. And that's why tribes want to be a part of management. Tribes want to be a part of of the decision making that affects how this landscape is taken care of. And these places, they're important. This mountain isn't there. If it's destroyed, then that important foundation of our culture is gone. That mountain, the way we draw it in sand paintings, the way it's drawn on rock art, that's gone. And we're 1/4 less native if those of us that believe these things. So these things are important. We look at down here at the Grand Canyon, and for Navajo people, the Western Navajo, this island here is where we emerge from. The Hopis emerged in the area. We have similar stories, but we hold this place very sacred. And we're always trying to protect this place against inappropriate development. But how this place looked when I took this picture on this cold winter day, how I felt looking there, knowing that story and making those connections, that's how everyone should feel coming here. That's how people far into the future that come to this place in 7 generations and 700 generations, they should come there and feel how I feel now, and they should be able to know that story that I leave for them. And we think of identity as landscapes, we think of it as artifacts, but it's also animals. It's one thing that we tend to leave out of our daily decision making, daily prayers, and these animals remind us all the time: stay humble, stay sharp, stay aware. In Navajo, we see some of these animals, and it's not really a sign of bad luck. It's a sign that be careful. A coyote runs across our path, and we stop and we pray, and sometimes we turn around and go home, depending on who you are. But what that coyote is telling you is, be careful. There's something in the area. Something scared that coyote out, and he ran by. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, that could have been an enemy scout. That could have been a scalp hunter. That could have been someone from an enemy group that's called Gunna Filagana. So these things are telling us to stay sharp. An owl flies out of a canyon. It's like, oh, I better go pray so nothing bad happens to someone I know. And again, 100 years ago, something scared that owl out. We have a bear that comes around sometimes here in the park, and people will leave offerings for it. But at the same time, he's telling us, you guys are dirty. You're leaving trash around. You're leaving gut piles. You're leaving sheepskins around. You guys got to clean that up, or I'm going to keep coming back. So we try to have to find those balances with the animals around us so that we can live in balance. They're showing us and teaching us when we need to be in balance. And even these domestic animals down here, we have my horse Whiskey and Roxanne, the young donkey. And they're modern animals, they're domestic animals, but they're a gift. They're a gift from my uncle, they're a gift from my brother, they're a gift from my grandmother who gave me Roxy when she was like the size of a dog. She was a baby that used to jump into your arms. But they're this gift that I'm obligated to take care of. And they're a gift from the Creator. He gave that to humankind to take care of. And when we let them go wild, when we don't take care of them, when we let them overgraze, when we let them starve to death, we're not taking care of them. We have to realize those connections that we have to the world around us even extend to domestic animals, cats and dogs. Like, we have to maintain those balances. And we look at plants. These plants are part of what define us. Navajos are, the old word for us was Apaches de Navajo. And that was the Navajos or the Apache group that practiced agriculture. We planted corn. We were corn growers. And for a lot of the tribes here in the Southwest, corn is who we are. It's important to get corn pollen. Cornmeal is important for ceremonies. It's an important ceremonial food. And as the climate is changing and it becomes hotter and drier every year, we're less and less able to grow corn. My family, we used to grow corn ever since I was younger, but the past 5 years, the past 10 years, it's even harder to grow corn because we don't have spring rain. It hasn't rained where I'm from since like, I don't know, March, February. It hasn't rained in that long, and that affects our ability to grow corn. It affects our ability to maintain that part of our landscape. Climate change is affecting who we are. Squash is important. If we can't grow that, we start losing that influence in our art, that influence in our food, that healthy aspect of our diet. It's affected by the lack of rain. We look at the plants around us. We look at pinon. Pinons around the park, they're an important economic driver. Families will come out and they'll pick pinons for weeks and sometimes even months in the fall during a good year. And they can sell those pinons and they can make $1,000. That's a rent payment. That's a truck payment. That's the cell phone payment. And if you're on the smart plan like me, $100 a month, it's a big deal. So with these trees being affected by the lack of rain and by the intense heat, we're less able to support ourselves. We're less able to maintain that part of our identity. We look at plants like juniper down here, and as those die out, it's an important building material. It's an important plant for medicines, for keeping bad luck away. And if we lose these plants, we lose who we are. So we're protecting that part of our landscape, and that's being affected as it gets drier. So again, I'm going to emphasize that we care. And why we care is because we have these different beliefs. We have these different customs, different stories about animals, different stories about plants and the plants we eat. And we all believe in them. Everything about these things is who we are. These animals, these places, these artifacts, they're all of us. And it brings us to this aspect of history. But let me answer some questions here real quick before we get into this part of it. So, does respect in terms of how to relate to Diné people and non-Diné people, how to act and what word to use, how to listen, how to express respect in one-on-one communication. What does respect mean? So it's basically that. We used to be listeners. We used to be able to stop, look at a landscape, look at the world around us before we make a decision and before we act on it. But in these modern times, I think all of us, including myself, we act impulsively. We act out of emotion. We act out of sadness or anger. And we need to find those balances before we make a decision. So that's how we should be looking at communication. We should hear each other out, and we should make the way we communicate based on how we relate to each other. So my answer about time is intriguing. I'm curious if I might have relate to time and space. So space is big. When we pray, if I was to pray here for some reason in this room, that prayer is like praying with my family, my mom and my father who can't be here, my father who's on the res, my aunts, my uncles that teach me a lot about being Navajo and about being human. And they're on lockdown because of the virus. Well, not lockdown, they're under curfews. The virus is spreading. And when I pray here, I'm praying with them just like they're right here. I mean, it's hard to explain, but literally, that's what I believe. When a Native person prays, you're praying with everyone. We're that close, but yet we're that far. And that's how we look at things. What I do here in the park, managing things, that's for my nieces and nephews. That's for their nieces and nephews. Space and time far into the future is happening right now, and I'm doing it for them. So Navajo Nation received money from Black Peabody. That's another question for another time, but I will try to get back to you later. So I'm not sure about the Modoc story. Yeah, Mark Dewfield, Duffield. I'm not sure how to answer that right now. Denise asks, when do Dine arrive in the Southwest? When we look at our stories and our culture, we've always been here. I think that's indisputable. We've emerged here. We've lived here a long time. We look at what we can prove with science through radiocarbon dating, through linguistic analysis, then we can start putting numbers 15,000 years ago. But to me, that's irrelevant. To me, 15,000 years ago is forever. 1 year ago is forever ago. 10 years ago is forever ago. That's how I look at it. Unanimous lives in southeast Utah. Rock art has been vandalized or shot at. Local states, the net people. And vandalism happens. Vandalism happens when we don't understand relationships. When we don't understand relationships with people, we fear them. And when we fear things, we destroy them. And I think that's unfortunate. And in some ways, when you look at rock art, you think of it as alive in its demise. Sometimes it can heal people. There's some ceremonies where they used to damage rock art. They don't do that ceremony anymore, but that has that healing aspect to it. Just like when we do a sand painting and we obliterate the sand painting in the morning, it has that healing to it. I'm pronouncing Dine, just depends on where you're from, I guess. Okay, so let me get back to this. So the unfortunate reality that brings us here to why we're doing archaeology, why we're doing cultural resource management, why we're out protecting sites from bulldozers on fires, when we're out protecting sites from getting damaged by water lines and highways, and why we're standing up the industry in places like Standing Rock in different places is this picture here on our right. A lot of us might have seen it in early history books, and this is Providence coming in from the east. The east out here being the 1800s, and you can see trains, you can see stagecoaches, you can see boats and forts out here. You can see farmers coming in with plows and miners coming in with shovels, and everyone's headed to the west. And out here in the west, it's dark. You can see the Indians running away from the light. You can see this lightness coming in. You can see these wild animals out here. And that's how people used to look at America. That's how people used to look at these native lands, that they had to be conquered, that the light had to be brought out here, that the darkness was bad. And it should be the other way around. Natives, we lived out here, we're in the light. We were doing fine. And that's just one of those things that one of the events we got to deal with, and one of the realities that we have to face every day. This thing, manifest destiny, is still going on. People still look at the West like we're a big playground. We're here for everyone's entertainment. People can come here, dump trash, dump nuclear waste. They can graffiti things. Like, this is here for their fun, and it's not, because out here, we're still here. This goes on. We got cell phone towers coming in. We got high-speed rail coming in. We got industrial farming coming in. We got miners still coming in. This is still happening, and we need to realize that. And the people that believe that they were supposed to come west and get rid of natives, they became politicians. They became educators and teachers. They became voters. They became governors. And we look at the words that some of them said, and I'm going to quote Andrew Jackson here. In the mountains and fortresses of an unknown people spread over extensive regions of the West, we behold the memorials of a once powerful race which was exterminated or had disappeared to make room for existing savage tribes. That was government policy, and in some places it still is. That belief that natives are not smart enough or intelligent enough to build massive architecture, Machu Picchu, Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, Wapaki, the Cahokia Mounds. That belief, it's everywhere. That belief is everywhere in our politics and our policies. And we look here at the Grand Canyon. Early explorers came in, they floated through the canyon, they renamed everything. Charles Dutton comes through, he renames some of the rock formations: Jupiter Temple, Diana Temple, Cheops Temple, Isis Temple, Osiris Temple, Brahma Temple. And what he did was he removed Native Americans from the landscape. No one asked, what should we name that? What do your people call that? What does the Havasupai think about this? What does the Hopi think about this? No one asked them. They came in and renamed everything from other cultures. And 100 years later, that came back on us because now people sincerely believe that natives, like, we're stupid, we're not smart, we're ugly, that the things we do could never have been because of what's in our own mind and what's in our own heart. That it had to be aliens that came in and showed us. Someone else had to come in and show us how to be us. Someone had to show us how to stack masonry rock and pull a straight line to build a wall. Someone else had to show us that. And it's out there. And here's another quote. No people, civilized or savage, could be considered to be native to the Americas by those who took the Bible literally. The Bible spoke of just one act of creation which took place in the Garden of Eden. Eden was thought to be in Asia, and Asia must have been the homeland of America's red men, as it was of all human beings. So they're removing us from the landscape. And when you remove people from the landscape, you remove them from history. You break those connections and you remove that will to live and that will to fight for what you believe in. So that was part of a plan. That was part of policy, taking Native identity. Now in 2020, they say it was aliens. But 100 years ago, they were saying, oh, it was Egyptians. And oh, natives couldn't have built Mesa Verde, it was Aztecs and Mayans. It's just people were in such disbelief that we're so smart and capable that they had to attribute everything we do to other people. And it's everywhere. The people that believe that, the people that taught that in school, they wrote laws, they wrote policies, they wrote acts that dictate how we manage land and how we manage people. And if we allow these things to be erased, if we allow places, artifacts, we're erased. We're erasing part of ourselves. When we take one artifact off a site, we're removing a little bit of some cultural connection to someone. So we're erasing ourselves. And it brings us to this. What is a Native American? We have to deal with this all the time. Native people, we constantly have to define who we are. And it's like, I could be walking on the street and no one has a right to say, tell me how you're Native. Tell me how you're connected. And like, that's not acceptable these days. And we have people imitating us. We have people playing out these stereotypes. And if you see these things, if you're taught them, if you learn them, if you're bombarded with them, you sort of start believing them. We have Native kids that believe these things. We have Native kids that believe that this is our identity. They've taken these things that we believe in and they've turned it into a joke. And we see these things. We laugh at people in Sedona looking for vortexes. We laugh at people at Burning Man wearing headdresses. And we laugh when someone tells us they have a Cherokee grandmother, but that's dangerous. It's dangerous because when we laugh at them because they made it funny, we're laughing at ourselves. They've taken our beliefs, they've taken the things that make us strong, they've diminished it and demeaned it until it's nothing but a joke. And it directly affects our self-esteem, and it emboldens those who are working against the best interest of Native people, and they're out there. So we constantly have to maintain those connections. We constantly have to maintain our identity, and we're constantly learning from the past in order to prepare for the future. And we care about these things because it's not just inanimate objects. It affects us. We Native people, we suffer from suicide epidemics, alcoholism, low self-esteem. We grow up as some of the poorest people in the country. We live among uranium mines and coal mines. We watch our families get sick. We bury our families when they die from cancers. We grow up in areas where we have to look on forests and parks where it's overgrazed, deforested, or burned from the lack of management. And we have non-native developers that constantly come in and try to destroy these places that give us strength. And we realize what happens to this earth, it happens to us. And that's why we care. These federal lands, they're born out of this myth that natives are vanished. They just mysteriously disappeared. And to quote the Declaration of Independence, that we're merciless savages. We're animals. We should be destroyed. We should be removed from history. And that myth It was reinforced by the constant lack of recognition by early environmentalists, people we look up to. We read them, we quote them, John Muir and Teddy Roosevelt. They had nothing good to say about natives, and we got nothing good to say about them either. But when we come to somewhere like Grand Canyon, where it's a centennial, where it's like, oh, we got Teddy Roosevelt, we got this and that, but we have very little native representation in these events, it affects us in that way. It makes people angry, makes people question things. And we care because historically native people, we weren't considered when it came to the management and disposition of federal land. No one said, how do you feel about Grand Canyon? How do you feel about managing this place? How do you feel about the Kaibab Forest or Glen Canyon Recreation Area? No one asked us when they established these parks. This myth that we left, it's been persistent. That's how a lot of these places were established. There's no one living there. Well, no one was living there because everyone was chased off, forced on reservations, or killed. That's why no one was there. And that myth has led to this long, rocky relationship with the different land management agencies that persist to this day. There's people still out there that believe these things. And we have to realize that Native people, we've never stopped using these lands. We're still here. And we all benefit from working together. We can utilize traditional cultural knowledge, traditional ecological knowledge, and we can incorporate that into modern land management. We can and we have to work together. And protecting and preserving these lands and what's out there is protecting and preserving ourselves and the future. The future is what matters. These forests, parks, monuments, rec areas, no one asked us, no one considered us, no one thought about us when they made these laws and policies. We were barred from using these areas for hunting, for agriculture, for gathering, migration, for water, and for ceremony. Things that we had done for time immemorial, a millennia, 15,000 years, whatever number you want. We were using it. We look at the Organic Act that established places like or established National Park Service. The fundamental purpose of national parks and monuments is to conserve the scenery and natural historic objects and wildlife therein, and provide for the enjoyment of the same in such manner and by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. We look at that Organic Act, and it doesn't mention Native Americans. It doesn't mention the people that used to live here, the people that believe in these places and that identify with these places. We look at the Wilderness Act that dictates how we manage a lot of our federal land. In order to assure that an increasing population does not occupy and modify all areas within the United States, leaving the lands designated for preservation and protection in their natural condition. Again, no mention of Native Americans. Let's see, there's a good one. A wilderness is hereby recognized as an area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor that does not remain. No mention of Native Americans. And we've been here since this continent was habitable, since the extinction of short-faced cave bears and Pleistocene megafauna and mega predators. We were managing these landscapes. We're managing it by living on it. We're managing it by using it. We're managing it by hunting, by setting the forest on fire, by moving plants and animals around. We were managing this place. So we weren't managing these acts. None of our prior occupation, our prior use, our traditional cultural properties, none of that was mentioned. And it wasn't until the American Indian Religious Freedom Act that we had some input in the way federal areas are managed. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's something to look into. Airflow. And we care a lot. And we're working together. It's not all bad news. It's not all Jason concentrating on the past. He can't get over it because I'm not going to get over it. It's right there. The past is yesterday. The past is a second ago. The past, the Havasupai being driven out of the park, that was just now. It's not just 100 years ago. It's not just 1977. These things are happening. They're going to continue to happen, and that's always going to keep it in the present. But we still have to work together. We have to cultivate and maintain a positive image of Native people. We have to show how smart we are. We can't let people focus on their bad things, but we'll show them our good things. And throughout the world, not just in the Americas, indigenous people's histories, it goes far back, far beyond time as we know it. 15,000 years is nothing. 30,000 years is nothing. And that's where we need to try to begin our understanding, knowing how time flows for Native people, knowing how space is set up. Oh, cool. I'm doing the History Channel guy. I can see myself. Aliens. And we have to realize that they're covered with the footprints of Native people. And these footprints, they're in the form of pueblos, of room blocks, of rock art, projectile points, pottery sherds. The names of the mountains come from Native people. The names of the rivers, the songs and stories of these people and these lands is a song and a story of ourselves. America could not have been America without Native people. We taught the early colonists how to plant. We taught them what to plant and when to plant it. We taught them government. They copied the Iroquois Confederacy when they developed the framework for this country. They learned how to fight from Native people. The colonists couldn't have beat the British unless they started fighting like natives. So there's a lot we've given to this country, and I think that that's always something to note. When we look at these lands, we're not just looking at a national park. We're not just looking at a national forest or rec area or a reservation. We're looking in the mirror. We're looking at ourselves. How we treat these lands is how we treat ourselves. We keep these landscapes healthy. We keep ourselves healthy. We keep ourselves healthy so that we can help take care of these landscapes. And that's an important part of my job as a firefighter is staying healthy so I can help protect this place, so I can represent this place and these people. And just knowing that what happens to this land happens to us. What happens to all of the things that are out there, it happens to us. And that's why Native people, we're willing to put ourselves on the line. That's why we're willing to take risks. That's why we're willing to defend these places. Places like Standing Rock and Oak Flat at San Francisco Peaks and out here near the confluence and also the upcoming proposed 4 dams out on the Lower Colorado. Those are issues that are coming up. So we have to maintain our connections to these sacred lands. You have to maintain your identity or they will come and take it from us. If you forget about these things, all you young natives, if you forget about these connections, someone is going to take it from you. You got to stay strong. You got to stay connected. You have to talk to your grandparents and your parents, and you got to learn from the past to prepare for the future. Back then, the Sand Creek Massacre, a bunch of non-native people that like to play army. They wore army uniforms. They played with army guns. They got drunk and they went and wiped out the tribes over in the Sand Creek. And then we look at these things. History is lining up. We have to learn history. It might be ugly. It might be terrifying, but we have to learn those lessons that led up to these bad events so we can prevent them from happening again in the future. We always have to be learning from the past. And I guess I have a double slide. So I'm going to go answer some questions real quick. Okay. Better term for indigenous petroglyphs and pictographs and rock art. As a native and as a scientist, I use the term rock art. We can call it rock writing. There's a lot of different ways we can refer to this, and they are alive and they are animate. And in some Navajo stories, my buddy Will from our shiprock office, he talks about rock art is when the holy people were finished teaching us how to survive on earth, when they taught us, when they were finished teaching us the ceremonies and the hunting ways, they left us and they became rock art to remind us of what they taught us and how they taught us. And that's why we respect these things. So in that way, they're alive. So I'm not quite sure how to answer that. It is art. It is on the rock. It is a type of writing. It's a type of communication. That's something that I'll have to gather up some natives and we'll talk about it. So the pandemic's dire impact in the pueblos and reservations of the Southwest has provoked much talk, little action on increasing. Do I see this as danger, cultural invasion? So part of what defines us as Navajos, and I think a lot of natives, is we take what works and we make the best of it. We're always learning new things. There's this myth that native people were like unchanging cavemen, that we're so stuck in the past that we can't move forward. But we're always taking what the future has, what technology has. We take what works, we apply it, and we make ourselves better. Right now, I think that broadband internet has potential to help us to educate ourselves, especially like in a pandemic. We're able to talk through this computer. Oh my God, I couldn't even translate this to my grandparents, my late grandfather. Like, I can talk to the computer and I can teach thousands of people, hundreds of people. This could be a school group. That's how we make the best of it. And I don't see it as endangering culture and history in that way. It becomes a danger when we have a lot of people taking a picture, leaving the geotagging on. The whole world sees it. Everyone goes there. And we don't need all these people coming to our reservation, disturbing things right now. In that sense, it's a danger. So, those in charge in DC, uh, I'll I'll leave that one for later. I can't quite answer that right now. Ancient images, good idea, Marilyn. Um, okay, good commentary by Mike. Okay, so I'm gonna move forward now. So we've had time to think about our connection to the past, our connection to the world around us, and we've had time to think about why we even care. Why am I doing the job I do, and why we're dealing with a system and institutions that were set in place not by us, but we've been taught to accept them and practice them. We look at this last generation and we deal with this: kill the Indian, save the man. That was government policy. They took young native kids, sent them off to boarding school, and taught them, like, you are a dirty, filthy human being. You are subhuman, and your existence and your land base is to help us, non-native people, Americans, become better. And they were taught that if you kill the Indian and save the man, you get rid of this dirty skin color and you change your color. You get rid of the things that your parents and grandparents taught you and you become less human. And I am trying to skip the slide, but it's not. And this was at schools on the reservation. This was taught in boarding schools. This was taught to our leadership. And we were taught that our cultural values, our beliefs, and our religion was bad. And I believe this picture is from 1954 out in St. Michael. Tradition is the enemy of progress. And that's how they confused us. That's how they made us weak. They're teaching us that who we are is bad, that we had to change our color. We had to change the things we believe in. We had to change the way we adapt and evolve in this modern system, that only this non-native capitalist way was the best way. And we look at the past, and here's a good quote from the guy that wrote The Wizard of Oz. Oh my God, one of my favorite movies. I never knew this dude was a dang freaking racist. And this is what he wrote. The pioneer has before declared that her only safety depends on the total extermination of the Indians. Having wronged them for centuries, we had better, in order to protect our civilization, follow it up by one more wrong and wipe these untamed and untamable savages from the face of the earth. In this lies future safety for our settlers and the soldiers who are under incompetent commands. Otherwise, we may expect future years to be as full of trouble with the Redskins as those who have been in the past. Why do you think we get so angry when someone calls us a Redskin? Why do you think we get so angry when they destroy part of who we are, the landscapes and the artifacts? It's stuff like this. People believe these things. They made it policy. And they were never able to break us. We're always going to be people of the earth. We're always going to have knowledge of our sacred landscapes, those mountains, those rivers, those hills, those archaeology sites out there. If we destroy these places, then we're just words. Native Americans, Indigenous, Indians, First Nations, that's all we're going to be if we allow this landscape and we allow those connections to be broken. Because we're everywhere. Hike around the canyon, hike around anywhere you go, you're going to find signs of Native Americans, places where people hunted, places where people lived. And we have to realize that sacred places, they're not just dots on the map. In our modern times, we tend to compartmentalize. We tend to diminish things. We tend to make them small, little pieces so we can take it apart. We take the landscape apart and we just call it what we can see. But what makes a landscape is not just what you can see, but what you can hear, what you can smell, all the plants and animals that are there, the association with stories or beings, everything that can be seen or touched, all of that is landscape. And all of that is also soundscape. All of that is also viewscape. All of that is also habitat. All of that is also culture and religion. You can't separate that part. You can't separate it. You can try. We're fighting over things. We're trying to pull things apart, but they can't break that from us. We're always going to be stewards of the land and what is within her, what the earth has to give us, what Mother Earth can give us. We practice it, we share it. And some of those things aren't just inanimate objects. They're not just places. They're not just solitude. They're not just quiet. But it's also justice. It's also equality. It's also morals. It's also ethics. Not just for this land, but for our people and for identity. You can't separate land from people. You can't separate identity from land. You can't separate identity from people. All those things come together. And we look at these places. We look at the confluence. We look at sacred places. We're always going to value them. We're always looking for a story. We might think we know it all, but we don't. I've been in archaeology 14 years, and I got so much to learn. I got so many people to talk from, so many people to listen to. Elders on the east side will tell me a different story about this rock cut. Elders on the west side will tell me a different story. Elders from Zuni and Hopi will tell me a different story. Each one is important. Each one becomes part of who I am, what they allow themselves to teach me, what they think I should learn. I apply that wherever I go and how I do my job. All these things are stories, old ceremonies, old events, old cavalrymen coming in, the sun rising and the night setting. All those things are out there. So I'll leave it with that, and we'll go to some questions here. Can everyone hear me? I see Amala's the only one moving around. Okay. You smiled from that. So I'm not going to get too much into politics. I'm not going to get too much into some of those issues. That's another issue for another time. And anyone that knows me knows that I got a lot to say about these things. I can't really comment on resisting right now. I can't really comment on those things. Corporations, you're right, it belongs to all of our children. Children might. So D, the U.S. is in a terrible state. Do we have any suggestions to restore it to Hajon? So there's a lot of ways. And the best way is just talk to each other, talk to your neighbors, learn what they're about, learn what drives them, learn about history, learn about the Constitution so we're quoting it and understanding it rather than yelling it. It's imperfect. It wasn't written for Native people. It wasn't written for colored people. It wasn't written for women. But that's what we got right now. So that's something we got to work with. Just learn about who we are, where we're from, and that's how we can find balances. Because a lot of our imbalance comes from not understanding who we really are and what we're capable of. Climate change is reality, drier, insight to the South Tribe Southwest. Does your past give you any insight or hope? So looking at the past, there is insight. We used to move around. We used to go from one place to the other, and now we can't. We're fenced in, we're corralled in. And the hope I have is we ourselves learn new ceremonies, learn new technologies to help ourselves survive. Otherwise, it becomes more difficult. Okay, and that seems to be the few questions there. Anything else? Amala, Kari, or Taylor, or Dylan?
I just want to thank you, Jason, for a wonderful presentation. It's so wonderful to see your face, and I'm so glad that all these people were able to join us today. And I know I always learn a lot from you, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, thank you. I like communicating these things. Then we'll all understand ourselves. We'll all have a common ground to talk from, and hopefully everyone out there has learned a little bit about natives, and we'll apply that. We'll talk to them. Teach me what you want to teach me, and what you don't want to teach me, don't. some things aren't made for non-natives, some things aren't made for non-tribal members, and it's vice versa. Some things that non-natives practice, it's not for natives. It's none of my business. Some things that other tribes do, like they can tell me about it, but it's not my place to speak for them or practice it. So that's just how we work. We learn how to live together, what's acceptable to each other, and how to respect each other. Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone. This was fabulous.
I hope everyone has a pleasant evening, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something today. Thank you.
Thank you.